Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 115 of the Strip Poker Night at the Inventory podcast. I'm Spinanon. I like ass. He's Nord. He likes tits. This is Grape. They like grapes. Say hi, Nord.
Hi, Nord.
Hi, Nord.
Say hi, Grape Ghost.
Hi. Hope you're all having a great day.
Well, I hope you're having a great day because 2/3 of this agenda this time, kind of one half and like an extra little bit in there, we'll see, is specifically your work. We will be talking about your relatively new testing character, as well as another brand new testing character from a brand new dev. It's always good to see new blood. They're not here on the podcast with us, but we're big fans of their character, I think. At least I was. I think they did a really nice job for a first-timer. Before we get into that, anything either of you want to share just in general?
Always good to be on the podcast. As an N of two. I'll get back. I'll give a new character on testing soon, so I can get back on. But yes, I'm Grape first developer of Saria and Lysithia, and soon to be maybe a couple other characters. I think around last time we were discussing Lysithia. Or you were discussing Lysithia rather. I might do a Saori update. I think I'm feeling the energy of that while I wait for some art on legal. So I think that might be another thing on the podcast soon.
Oh, very nice.
Okay. Well, if we're ready to get into it, we're going to start things off. We're gonna give Grape Ghost a little time to prepare their manifesto, because the first character is one again by a totally new dev known as Secret Serval. This is Vinyl from, I think it's Bomb Rush Cyberfunk.
Yep.
Not cyberpunk, but cyberfunk, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is a relatively recent indie sensation, kind of in the same vein as like Jet Set Radio or something like that. It's kind of got that techno-futuristic, punkish kind of vibe to it. Am I correct? Am I making this up? Is this an AI hallucination?
No, that's about
To my knowledge,
accurate.
that seems to be correct.
Yeah, very interesting choice. As far as I'm aware, she doesn't have a ton to work with, and in the actual source, I don't think it's a real like dialogue or narrative heavy game. And she's just one of many characters. I'm not even sure she's like the fully the protagonist, or if there is one. But she definitely stands out. She looks unique and has a very out there design, especially like just a bright yellow. Her very puffed up unitard. But yeah, new dev, brand new character, brand new franchise. Great to see. I think this is very much in the spirit of Spinati as a project. So Grape Ghost, what did you think of her as you played with her on testing?
I really enjoyed Vinyl. When she came out, I originally thought that she was a little boring or a little basic, but she does give better repetitive plays, I find. And as she's been fleshed out, her targeted dialogue, I really like Vinyl. I'm super happy that she's here. I've never played her original franchise, but everything from her artwork to her execution, as someone who was a new developer, and people didn't believe I was necessarily a new developer when I started, I think Secret Serval's done such an amazing thing. I cannot wait to see what his next project is.
That's true. We probably should have mentioned that in some regard. Grape Ghost had an unfortunate first experience where they had the crime of having talent as a new dev, so everybody thought they were like a sock puppet, forgetting that
Yes.
people outside the Discourse server can in fact not be complete shitters.
It is okay. I'll admit that Vinyl is in fact my sock puppet account. No, just kidding. I'm really excited to see Secret Serval continue to develop. I think in some ways I really feel like I have a developer class. Like there weren't a lot of people who were developing at the same time as me, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more enmeshed the current developer cycle. And I think Secret Serval's one of those where he's a very good dev. But I think as far as the character goes, I think her artwork is really phenomenal. It's come a long way. I think her dialogue is something that Secret Serval really leans into. She's a very hip Black woman and presents a very strong personality with that. And I think I enjoy her. It feels respectful and authentic in a lot of ways. I can't tell if she's just very well written and sourced, but it's very enjoyable to play the game with her, and it doesn't feel like, to the previous episode with Yuzuki, it doesn't feel like it's a caricature. It's nice. It feels like it's, the effort's been made, and it's really enjoyable to play her.
Again, I don't think there's a ton to go off of character-wise in the source. I think it's mostly vibes as a basis. So, I mean, if you like the vibes, then I guess the character works for you.
I did some research into her beforehand. She does seem to be one of the main characters as such. Apparently her allegiance tends to flip around a little bit as the story goes on, because unlike some of the others who are with specific groups, she's more of a independent until certain parts of the story. Definitely has something to work with. It isn't just like an NPC with no lines of dialogue. But I remember the developer saying they were having a bit of trouble, the approach a lot of new developers have, which is, okay, how do I extrapolate this character's 50 lines of dialogue in Source into 1,000 lines of dialogue in Spinati? Did you have more to say, Grape Ghost?
Well, I think she's just really good. I don't have any feedback other than I do hope she continues to be developed in the way that she is. I think she's really enjoyable. I look forward to having more dialogue with her and seeing her interact with other characters. I really hope Secret Serval is with us for a very long time and continues to add to the game.
Yeah. You did touch on an interesting phenomenon there, which is that every character tends to have a graduating class of sorts. In terms of characters that are developed around the same time tend to get a lot of banter between each other, even if you wouldn't really expect the characters or the source materials to be paired up together, just because it's convenient to target newer developed characters because you're going to get responses most of the time. And I do see that Vinyl, her most targeted opponent at the moment is Saria, so it was fun pairing those together and seeing what you've all come up with.
Also just recently added a bunch more lines too, so you should see a more complete set of targets between the two of them.
Yeah.
I liked the contrast they had with her being, Saria living totally within nature and Vinyl hardly knowing what a tree looks like.
Saria told her to touch grass.
It's true. I noted. I think that was one of my screenshots. Vinyl has not touched grass ever.
Sorry, as a design concept is about touching grass and encouraging as many people as possible to touch grass. So, mission accomplished.
I think Serval has done a great job with her personality. She was a little bit shallow on launch, but at this point she has hundreds of more lines since she first dropped, so it was fun revisiting her. Her model also got a slight overhaul. In some ways, her model is almost more detailed and expressive than her actual source material, 3D model, because it has that retro PlayStation style to it. The wonderful job.
Yeah, the low poly.
Yeah, the low polygon look. She has some very expressive posing. She doesn't go into full-on anime tier expressions like Momo or Yuzuki would have, that we talked about last episode, but Vinyl has her own stuff going on. She has a breakdancing pose where she just full on flips herself around 180 degrees. And of course she already has a great looking butt pose, which is a fun little extra. The banter between her and Saria so far is also really good. I'd love to see how that develops with other characters as well. I'm looking to target her a lot with Yusei, just because they have sort of surface level similar.
Well, that would be really good.
But they both have sort of very surface level similar stuff where they're both in cyberpunk-esque near future societies they have that are based on an existing city. She's from the city of New Amsterdam, and I think Serval was trying to determine if that was meant to be an alternative universe New York, or if it's legitimately just New Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
I think he did settle on making her Dutch. And honestly, there's enough Americans in the game. It's okay. Let's do something else.
I think part of that decision was because Team Reptile, the developers, are a Dutch studio. So it's probably, a nod to their country of origin. I don't have much else to say, but in the sense of I don't really have anything to critique as such, I just want to see even more of her. And I'm very excited to see what Cyril does going forward. Her stripping poses and all were good as well. Actually, if I had to think of something to critique, it's just her forfeit posing could use some touch-ups here and there. But I wouldn't be able to go into that much detail right now just because it's a lot of subtle stuff with how the hands are posed or how her legs are posed that you just have to kind of refine it a bit to get it looking good.
What does she have, to move around more? She's licking her own fingers in this pose. That's pretty odd.
Well, no, she does that, and that's great. But it's a problem a lot of models face where their fingers can clip into their thighs. Or I noticed with her legs sort of are just always spread wide open, at least from what I remember. So there isn't that much variety in her posing in her forfeit and finished stages. But overall, it's kind of just nitpicky feedback I could give. What she has so far is great.
All right. Well, if it's my turn, let me start off with the art here. I think overall, this is a challenging first project, I think is fair to say. In some regards, not a ton to work with, and the difficulty of a Kisekai model kind of comes down to their distance from an anime schoolgirl. She's a woman, at least. Male characters are definitely tougher than this, but skin-tight clothes, not the easiest thing in the world to manage, especially with the tight neck hole wrapping around her chin, and then the futuristic jacket, and the unusual hairstyle by Isekai standards. He had to make it out of roses. Now you can never unsee that. But yeah, I mean, it's an appealing look. It's an appealing design. The colors really jump out at you. It's unique. There are characters with tight clothes, I would know, but this is both tight and kind of baggy in areas. There was a real effort made to match the source, moving her hairline up, so there's more of a side cut thing going on. And again, she's been on testing for a while, so she has seen a number of improvements, both writing and art-wise. So it's good to see he's putting in that kind of effort. And there is the obvious fact that she's a black girl, and Spinati is a bit infamous for not being the most diverse roster of all time. Despite our 400 characters, we have a half a dozen black ones. Most of them not even particularly popular or sexualized. Kaz is basically a joke half the time. I don't know who even was the last black girl. Shiva from Resident Evil 5, who was a fetish, a vehicle for a spanking fetish. Was that the most recent one? Maybe Amalia, who's technically black coded. I've been told. I don't know.
We have had a few. The most recent ones
dark
were
skinned as black, or do they have to actually be black? Is it so? As rock, definitely. But the others are a little bit more ambiguous, just going by what's online.
She is tagged as criminal, which came up with some very funny lines, with Momo going suddenly very hostile and cold to her for really no reason.
Oh no.
And I made the observation that it's not quite as simple as that, but it is quite funny that we haven't had a black girl in so long, and she's a criminal and runs in a gang in an inner city, and the police are after her, and she fights them, and she has a big afro, and she break dances and to hip hop.
I mean, before that, we've had Aoi, we've had Aravi, Aquagran, Misfortune, and Levitin. So we're not completely devoid of darker skinned women. It's just that if you want to get technical, she is darker than them. So I guess.
Well, it's just a question of ethnicity at that point. There was like an ethnic breakdown we did like a year back, and there were literally like half a dozen black characters out of 400. And some of them were like Uhura and Shiva, and those projects did not go well. So, on the whole, though, yeah, I mean...
So glad that Vinyl's good. That's the case.
Hey, the fact that she's here and she's actually good is great. You know? Not just diversity, but a genuinely good character. And like with other things that make her appealing as well and unique, such as the tight bodysuit. I wish she was nude underneath. It's not too late, okay? She's only in testing. She's not nearly as married to it as I was when I made the change. You can do it. She doesn't have canon underwear either, I bet.
She would have way too few layers, though.
You could just make some shit up. Just have Joro come in.
That's not an option for her.
She can just rent some. Just have her like hide behind a boombox. I don't know. The strip pose that she had for taking off her bodysuit, it's fine for now, but I wish it went a little harder. I wish it played up some of the elasticity of her jacket if she or her suit if she grabbed it from like the neck and maybe like stretched it over her chest or something like that. If you could put the extra effort into a pose like that, that could go really hard. Because like I don't think it has a zipper or anything. Even Maya's doesn't have a visible zipper. I just made that up. The strip poses in general, Nord praised them. I think they could use a little improvement or a detail on like the clothes being half off. Again, that's just a big thing to focus on. Her mouth is often closed. Again, there's a real effort to match the source material in terms of style with like the eyes are pretty reasonably close, besides like the little anime dots of shine on them. The mouth, like she's got custom lips. I think that makes it a bit hard to pose with or a bit annoying because like she doesn't move her facial features as much as maybe some other characters. But it does seem like in Source she's kind of stoic a lot of the time, so that kind of works. She seems sometimes a bit inexpressive when she does kind of break that stoicism a little bit and the pose doesn't, or the face doesn't always match quite as much as it should. But the rest of the face is pretty good. Unique eyes. Unique mouth, all that good stuff. Maybe do a little bit more with the eyes. I noticed she jumps to starting masturbation right at must masturbation or must masturbate. Give her a little bit of room to breathe, take in the loss, and then start kneeling down. But overall, when she's naked as well, very hot body, good detail on everything. Serval has taken to each aspect of development very well, I think. And that's true of the writing as well, but I can get into that. There's a decent tone all the way around. She feels pretty arm's length, but there's also like a clear desire communicated that she kind of wants to break out of her shell and get to know new people. She's fun and flirty with men, which I almost didn't expect. It's kind of nice to have like such a... It feels like a straight sexuality can kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit at times, but she was very clearly more interested in men than in women, and she made that very clear, and that was it was nice and straightforward. More italics and punctuation could accentuate it even.
She made it very clear that she wanted to see Hilbert's butt from the very moment of the game, and she kept saying that every round until he did show it off.
Yeah, there's some bugs at the moment. There's some rookie mistakes in terms of her repeating herself certain lines every hand. So you're going to want to iron those out. I noticed also as well, there was no line where she really like introduced herself. I remember this very specifically because right when I got started developing, there was a post Arndress made, shooting the breeze on round 0, where you could add for like a hand line on the first round of the game, introducing yourself. I was always surprised because I did that right away, but a lot of characters still to this day don't really do that. They just kind of launch into their filtered lines or whatever right at round 1. And you kind of want to build up to that a little bit, especially for a character like this that maybe not everybody knows. So... yeah, I mean, part of play testing is thinking about the pacing of the character and how you don't want to do too much too fast and what kind of experience and portrayal you want to convey as things go on. So consider that. She nicknamed Saria. I wonder if she has other nicknames for characters in the works. And she definitely seemed a little more freewheeling with time. She took a lot of nude selfies. Again, she got very flirty. She licked her own fingers and she winks at you. It's good stuff. But by the end, you can sometimes kind of feel the lack of material that Serval was working with. She doesn't have a ton of like really strong opinions about certain topics. She feels like generally pretty pleasant, but kind of hard to describe in some aspects because of that, aside from like some of the flirtiness. Overall, though, I'm really impressed with Serval's solo work here. Again, it's hard writing a character for like a brand new franchise. You got to represent the franchise as well as the character, and you got to learn all the aspects of development. And again, I always really like when someone comes in and is willing and able to interface with all aspects of development. They make the model, they do the posing, they figure out all the tools, they do the writing. He's taken to it very well. And I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I mean, like collabs are nice, but it's always great when someone goes all the way and gets the full experience of things. And I'm sorry for temporarily seducing him into playing a challenge run for Final Fantasy V, so he's not working on her at the moment. He'll get back to it. Any other thoughts on Vinyl?
It's good. Do more.
Yeah, excited to see what Serval does in future with her and for the game in general. Don't get discouraged if you've forgotten a play once marker or anything on your character. It happens to everyone. Even me, I still occasionally forget to do that. And it requires hot fixing.
Here's my final thoughts. Do a little bit more with the heavy masturbation faces, and change her up a little bit. The posing on the finished stage looks a lot like the forfeit phase. But anyway,
yeah, she really could use a lot more lines, and I have the post like once she's finished, that would be something bad. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier.
Very good character overall. Very good first effort. Excited to see more from her and from her dev. So, Grape Ghost, you mentioned you are a slightly more experienced dev, and so here's the thing. Throughout this episode and the previous one, we have been alluding to your new testing roster character, Saria, or Saria if you prefer, from The Legend of Zelda. And that probably broke a lot of people's brains that we were doing that so casually, because if you're familiar with the character on any of a passing level, the alarm bells may have immediately gone off, because Saria is known as being the unaging child character. She's sort of the childhood girl next door best friend of Link when he's like a 10-year-old boy. In Ocarina of Time, the game where she debuted, there is fan art where people just age up Saria, Ocarina of Time Saria, and they just do what you would expect. They sex her up a little bit with proportions, and they make her taller and still mostly petite, but like more reasonably an adult woman. People kind of get hung up on Saria as a concept because the Kokiri, the race that she is from, are basically forest elves, and they're not supposed to age. But I mean, if you physically age her up, I personally don't think that makes a difference. I personally think that's fine then. If you just ignore that part, there are ways to write around it. But if you look in the Spinati description of her, and again, she is aged up proportionally physically in that way, but it very specifically says, unlike the Saria from Ocarina of Time, this one is from Hyrule Conquest, a fan game, a fan project, where the Kokiri do age, and Saria is aged up in the actual setting.
Even then, there's the idea that she can't age up in Ocarina of Time is a very specific nitpick, because it does seem to be the case that the intention is that they die when they leave the forest because they begin to age, and then people want to be very, very particular. Well, it's not it's a third-party source, and like if Hyrule and Storia didn't exist, that would be canon, and there's nothing in there that decanonizes it. So it seems like a very trivial thing to say. This is possible. But anyway, I think ultimately the Hyrule Conquest version is just a better choice for the game in general. But yeah, the purpose.
So I'm going to let you say your piece on a number of these issues in a second here, but let me just say, like, if it were me, first of all, making this character, I'd just say, fuck it. I'd make her the Ocarina version. I'd just age her up and say, yeah, whatever, I just aged her up. What are you going to do about it? Oh, she can't age? Well, now she can. That would be my approach. You wanted to steer clear of that discourse altogether, and I respect that. And Hyrule Conquest is a version of the character where you can do that with, but still draw from various relevant aspects of the setting. And I'll let you get into the actual like motivation behind this character. But before we do that, you wanted to sidestep the discourse, and of course, that immediately created a bunch of age-related discourse on Discord. I'll spare you the full details. People there's like random people on Reddit chiming in and like getting other characters caught in like the crosshairs. There's like Spooky and Nagatoro and Natsuki and all these characters. And what it eventually really ended up being, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about this, Nord, but the rules for aging up characters weren't really changed, but they were kind of more exhaustively codified as a result. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I can get into that briefly. Essentially, we didn't effectively change any rules that were already there. We just made it more explicit what kind of content isn't allowed. We've put it in the context
don't make lolicon. Don't make lolicon. It's not that hard.
Yeah, so the adult characters only rule has been clarified so that like you can age characters up. 12 is the bare minimum, and that pretty much only exists informally for Pokemon characters, if we're being honest. Characters older than that will face less and less scrutiny up until the point where, like, if you get a character like Ryuko, who's apparently 17 in Source, you can get away with just, minimal changes, essentially. We put in a very specific bullet point to say, listen, we're aware of the 1,000-year-old dragon child trope. You're not getting away with it, don't even try. Potentially relevant to Saria here is that we clarified something that would have been in effect anyway, but was never formally written down, which is you can make use of Fanon to tweak a character to suit the rules of the game, as long as they meet the basic requirements elsewhere. So they still have to be above the minimum age in their original non-Fanon source. So, like, you can't, for example, make Anya from Spy X Family and say, oh, look, I have this AU where she's 18, it's fine, right? No, she's still a toddler in Source. But this is something that, like, people have done all the time already, and, like, it's practically necessary if you're going to age up most characters. Like, if a character died in Source at age 16, but they're in this game alive and well at age 18 or 19, you're going to have to be invoking some level of Fanon there. So it's just really clarifying that into the rules. And, like, Saria in Ocarina of Time already seems to be, like, mid-teenage years. And then you have Hyrule Conquest that outright shows, yeah, their tree father's kind of dead, so now they're subject to the passage of time. And also they have to fight in a Game of Thrones-esque war.
She is portrayed as a bit older or like wise beyond her, more sage-like compared to a lot of the other Kokiri. I will say that, like, the actual spirit of the rule, in essence, is the main appeal and of the project and the point of it cannot be that they're underage, even if you make some attempt to age them up. And it's like, it's fine if there are other aspects of the character that are appealing to you, and you keep those while aging them up and leave the sort of the overly innocent underage part behind. So the point is, like, y'all ain't slick, and don't think you're gonna get around the mods by making a character who might be aged up at Axe very young.
And to me, like, Saria and Spinati is more mature than a lot of other adult characters in the game.
I
And
think
you
she
and-
looked older than a number of characters like Nagatoro and Natsuki and
Yeah.
Chihiro. And I don't remember a ton of controversy surrounding them when they dropped. So
Yeah.
for Saria to get much of this in particular, I think it is the unaging child thing in lore just giving people the ick.
It did give me the ick at first, I will admit, but I considered the evidence and supporting arguments for and against, and ultimately I've concluded that she's fine. And having played her again and seeing the further adjustments Grape and Namasp have done to make her fit, it feels like they've put in more than enough effort collectively. Sorry that we took over from you there, Grape.
No.
But here's the thing. Grape Ghost is something of an academic, something of a scientist themselves, something of a PhD even, and is not the one to take the ick lying down. They wanted hard evidence, hard statistical analysis. So very much in the spirit of Namasp, they took that discourse and retreated into the night and blacked out and woke up with quite the Namasp post. Something resembling of an actual academically rigorous study. Not quite to those standards, but certainly more academically rigorous than maybe anything else that's ever been made in the service of this game. But what exactly happened there, I will let you introduce and explain, Grape Ghost. Hopefully we did that justice.
Right. I will spend some time talking about the design principles, sorry, in a minute, but something that's really always kind of bothered me is that there's a lot of, I'm trying to think about the most polite way to say this, there's a lot of strong opinions about things that are opinions. They're not based in fact. And I think we all live in an era where alternative facts or the concept of that is wrong. You cannot disagree that the sky is blue. Yes, you can say it's different colors, different times of the day, or latitude, or all that, but you cannot look up and say, oh, the sky is That is not reasonable, and if your stance is, well, despite all the evidence in front of my eyes, despite everything that is being made and every effort that has been done to codify this, I'm still upset. Feelings and facts are complicated things, but nobody has ever in the history of humanity sat down and done a rigorous test of somebody's beliefs. And you never test your beliefs, and you're very convinced that, oh, well, I have this belief, so it's correct. Well, maybe you're not right. And so what I did is I saw the discourse over Saria, and I didn't want to do this as like a call-out post or like an insult or anything like that. It was just out of curiosity, like, do people actually look at the characters that are in the game and see children? For lack of a better way of looking at it, like, do people really care that Megumin looks the way she does, or that Senko looks the way she does, or, so on and so forth? And so, I had a compound on that. I was like, okay, well, how do we validate people are interpreting things how does an unbiased observer actually look at these characters? Because that's one of the rules before they recently were revised, is like, an unbiased observer must have these opinions. Well, what is an unbiased observer? You know the people who made this content, here are the characters. Well, how do you get an unbiased example of it? So I did that. I basically took a bunch of my research budget because I was graduating early, and I spent it on a bunch of Illy gift cards and then proceeded to open this survey. And it was very simple. It was essentially like, I took all the information that was available to me at the time from the game, like, this is what the character's age is, this is what the character's intended age is by age-up rules. These are different modifications that happen to the character over the course of their development, like if they're dead, okay, they're not dead anymore. They have an aversion to sex, okay, they don't have that aversion anymore. And then I took a second look against the performance of resorts based on who votes for them, and a bunch of other factors that are just kind of intrinsic to the character, like how many hits spam on Rule 34. And I combined all this into a thesis. And then I took a quick survey from about 70 people on essentially like, how familiar are you with this given character? And then what AHD group do you think they belong to? So step one is, if you're too familiar with the character, you do not unbiased observer, that information gets dropped. If across the survey you're being kind of like random and scattershotting it, those survey results get dropped. And then, I took basically the evidence of like, okay, well, where do people rate these individual characters? And then, are they accurate? And I assembled all of that, this 40-page document that was actually very difficult to write. So something I've gotten a comment on here and there is the reason why I type the way that I do is because I actually have dyslexia and it's pretty bad. So my apologies for the actual document not being the most proofread. I was very excited to get it out. And I tend to avoid concatenation or hyphenation in my words because sometimes I switch the letters and it starts to kind of compound itself. But it basically was like, okay, well, what do people actually think of the characters in the game? So the long story short is there are a couple of interesting conclusions that were takeaways from the study. The first of which is most people who look at the characters in the game actually tend to overrate their ages far more than they underrate them. And in general, most characters are viewed as like in their later teens or in their 20s, in a lot of cases even. Then, the ones that actually get rated most as like younger teen or younger are the characters that are older. So meaning, I guess, the characters that are like, they'd be like, I'm over 1,000 or I'm over 500. Like those are the ones that tend to be the most young looking in a lot of ways. So that's something I think about. And then I did some other analysis on like what character, like what do devs like versus what do players like. And so on and so forth. But the key takeaways are, one, people don't really care about the age of the characters in the game. They tend to overestimate them. And then, as you might expect, the more obscure the characters, the more developers like them, the more popular they are, the more players like them. And there's also but there's also a lot of other conclusions that are hard to draw. So anyway, sorry for kind of taking up all the air in the room. I will pass back.
Well, let me briefly say that I think I may have forgotten to mention that the link to the general feedback poll responses sheet should be in the description of the previous episode and then also this one. And the link to this paper, if you'd like, can be in the description of this episode as well, if you'd like to take a look at the full thing. There's a number of sheets of data and survey results and so forth. It's definitely it's a lot to interpret. It's not the most accessible compared to some other design documents associated with Spinati, but there's a lot of interesting stuff here. It's just not always easy to parse. If you can say some of your own takeaways, if you have others.
Yeah, so it is actually a very cyclical development process. So, for instance, it seems like characters tend to go a little bit, kind of out of bounds in a way, and then really come back to the center. So, for instance, a couple of cohorts ago, there was Vanessa, Vela, and Tifa. Like, there was no questions about what these characters were, right? And then that goes into Carmine, Serena, and Rosie. A little bit, there's a little bit more wiggle room to interpret them how you will. That led back into Priscilla and Vinyl, again, kind of recorrecting towards the norm. And then it's Saria and Witch. So those characters look more alike than they don't. And then the next cycle looks to be Roxy and some other characters. So I'm imagining, this is very cyclical. People tend to make a lot of stuff and then dial it back, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Nord, do you have any takeaways from this paper?
Yes, I thought it was a very informative read into seeing what like a general group of people would think about what we've actually done for this game. Did you sample for any bias of people? Like, did you have any like initial screening question of like, do you recognize the style of this? Do you recognize what game this is from? Just to filter out anyone. Oh,
yeah, that was pretty critical. So there's essentially only 2 questions in the survey, then a picture of the character from the game. So using the art from the game. And the first question is, how familiar are you with this character? And then anything that was above, I think, like, I know, like, I've seen this character before, got thrown out. I forget the exact specifics, but it's like, if you know what they're from, or you know their name, or you've watched their media, like, those get dropped because you're no longer an unbiased observer. So it's just very easy to be like, hey, like, and this obviously leads to some weird results where it's like the more obscure your character is, the less people recognize them, so therefore, the more internal consistency that character has, you either need to do a very big study to get some of these, and so on and so forth.
But did you filter out, do you know what Spinati is?
No, I actually didn't, because I was not graduated yet, and I did not want to invite questions that... So, admittedly, there are some things I would do very differently if this were, more formal, but I also wanted to get my PhD and not worry about it, so...
Yeah, I remember you had to explain yourself after the fact of, like, why have you given a lot of people, like, coupons and vouchers for this survey about fictional characters?
My PI was very curious, and I think the answer he gave was something to the effect of, I went through a really bad breakup, and I am trying to spend this resourcing before it gets taken away by the federal government. And, she was like, yeah, that's fine. Go do it. Go do it again.
Yeah.
What I'll say about this paper is that I think there is a lot of value in having or seeing an outsider perception, because you have us, the devs, and you have the people who kind of discover this game on their own, and there's a lot of buy-in there in terms, for pornography specifically, that you would not get from the general public, or at least they wouldn't admit to it.
Yeah, and it's difficult.
I was also curious, like, how was this pitched? Because there are a lot of, in the socio-political sphere in general right now, and on the larger internet, there's been a sex-negative trend. So among the younger generations as well, regrettably, at least that's what they say. I don't actually buy it. In terms of
I think it was a lot of people trying to be the most virtuous, regardless of the validity of it. But like, are the demographics here, like, would you say, like, pretty young, pretty accurate to Spinati and its player base? I would say it's pretty accurate to the type of people who would be exposed to the game and play it. So, for instance, one of the more controversial takes from the essay was more or less along the lines of, like, some people aren't necessarily attracted to characters that, like, for instance, like, a person who's attracted to Megami is either not really thinking very deeply about her age, which is like 14 or 15 or something, or, realistically, you can't keep, teenagers away from pornography. So some of these people were, not in the survey itself, but it's like, I think people don't really think too deeply about the age of a character, and I think a lot of people either relate to them because they are of a similar age and playing the game anyway. But, yeah, this isn't like, I don't think most people are out there being like, oh, yeah, 14-year-olds, because it's just fucking weird. But as far as, like, most of the people who were surveyed were grad students. So I think it's people who tend to correlate with people who are interested in anime and things like that. So you'll find, there's a lot of surveys about this. I'll post the relevant, references in chat later. But effectively, I think the people who were surveyed were pretty standard set of people who would be interested in this type of media, like, as a whole. Like, the people who played, like, Doki Doki Literature Club aren't, your freshman high school football players, right? So I think it's, like, internally valid, but yeah, like, if you go give a survey at a retirement home, then you get a very different result. At the same time, there's limits to what we can actually survey.
They'd probably just ask, why is her hair blue?
Probably.
So anyway, yeah, we can't get into the full results of this paper or anything, but yeah, I also want to say I also enjoyed reading your breakdown of character portrayals in the game, the various concessions that were made to put them in the game, whether it's like a canon circumstance thing or an age up or whatever, and their relative efficacy. It's very proud to see that Maya and Jarrett did not have any concessions. Totally be down to fuck and play strip poker. It's all good. Aside from the circumstances of not being from Earth. Yeah, so I think we can take away from this age concerns. Overblown. Who knew? I expected the opposite response, but it just goes to show that's why you got to do the math.
I was as well, to be honest. I was essentially engaging in this very deeply to make sure, like, hey, okay, like, is this a legitimate case? And the answer is no. Actually, people tend to overestimate it. I was, like, very surprised by that, but I think it kind of fundamentally boils down to, like, if you have a pimple on your nose, you're very aware of it. Some people are going to be very aware of it. Most people, even if they're aware of it, don't really care. Is the way I'd portray that.
Well, after all that, let's get into Saria herself. Now that we've accepted her presence in the game, do you want to talk a bit about her actual development and presence in the game? You did the writing, and Namasp did the art and modeling, and that's gone through some revisions as well. She even has alt skins. But yeah, go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, so she has two alts. She has two skins. The default one is more of a composite. It's not an Ocarina of Time version. It is just sort of a composite. And the second skin, Conquesting Chieftain, is her Hyrule Total War outfit. So the conversation's really interesting as far as like the development history, because I originally wanted to do the Hyrule Conquest version Saria, and after further discussion, I'm like, oh, maybe we should get some elements of like Ocarina of Time and to make it more, accessible to people. That was a mistake. So, no, I think the version for Hyrule Conquest is very interesting, and I think what I really wanted to do with this character is there were a bunch of other Zelda characters, ironically, in development at the same time, and Saria is the only one who's actually testing, so, that would be a little bit of an unfortunate set of circumstances. But essentially, I think Saria, as it's written, is a very interesting exploration of what it means to sort of come out of your shell. In a lot of ways, like, it's not so much this burden of eternal longevity or youth or whatever you want to put it. It's more like, what is it like to suddenly come out of circumstances that you've been very focused on for a very long time, especially when the authority figures over you have, vanished or changed, right? So I think that was a really interesting way of exploring this character, and she provided something that was like, okay, it's a Zelda character, so it's gonna have a lot of like TLC alongside others, but also it's an opportunity to do something a little different than most people might, be seeing. But, at no point was this like, oh yeah, we're gonna get the lowly convo. Like, no, that's wrong and horrible in a lot of ways. And I think like the level of pushback she got, I was like, this one, really? Like, this is the line in the sand, are you sure? So, the design process was really interesting. I basically went to the Namasp and had just gotten out of a very rough breakup, to put it simply. And, he was very supportive in making sure that we had some content to explore, and I kind of dragged him along with me on this expedition of learning a lot about the people who developed for the game. So that's sort of the broader development context. I really enjoy writing her. I think she has a very particular voice where you have to thread this needle between being playful but also kind of wise. So in some ways, the energy I wanted to go for with her was 40-year-old Vine Mom. And that's not quite version it up, but that was sort of the original intention. I will let you two ask what you want to ask or talk about it. What's good will work for a minute, didn't it?
Yeah, go ahead, Nord.
Okay, so I did play her when she first launched. I forget how much I actually conveyed to you back then, but I do have some comments now. I used her alt costume for this. Unfortunately, you have messed up the aura pose for her alt costume. Now you have to start the character all over again from scratch.
I'm so sorry.
I want to say that as you have written her, she has a lot of wisdom and experience. Like, it very much comes across that she has seen shit and done shit. She does have some...
lot of murder. There's a lot of murder in Hyrule Conquest.
I mean, she fits right in with the Fire Emblem characters we have, such as Hilda, who will say, "Ugh, you're making me work," and then cave your face in with a giant battle axe. You've done really well for her. She has some tomboyish elements to her, which I am a bit of a fan of. I did go for the Hyrule Conquest version. I think I already said that. The alt costume. It's an interesting, subtle change. I wonder if maybe you could have used... well, forgive me if this is what she already does, but you could maybe have used that as an excuse to give her a different strip order.
The strict orders are different depending on the costume.
They are, okay. Because I'm just wondering if, I see that, like, she takes her top off later in this costume. I'm just wondering if maybe you could have had her, like, go entirely bottomless first. Although that would require another stage worth of effort from our dear friend Namasp. But overall, it was a cute design. He's done a great job with her posing and the expressiveness. I like how her ears wobble a bit when she's like having a strong emotion. In terms of the writing, the two main critiques I would have are that she does have a couple of oddball comments that can sort of fire from the very start of the game unconditionally. Like she's like, "Oh, by the way, the word for vagina is..." is one of them that she said very early on.
I really ought to calm that one down.
Instead of having to rework entire cases, what you can do is you can set individual line weight to be lower, which means it has the same like priority chance to play, but has a lower like weighted chance to play compared to other lines in the same priority.
I vaguely remember that, so yeah, I'll take her with that.
I did manage to win my entire test game with all the characters we've been talking about these 2 episodes, and I think you've done a great job with like she has taglines in the forfeit to target a chubby player, but you could maybe expand that to then cover other like tags that a player can give themselves for like other users to enjoy, because the ones you've done so far are great. I wasn't sure if you wanted to address that before you're done with sponsorship and stuff. Well, I know she's, at the time of recording, she's awaiting mod QA, so maybe that's something you would do after she's on main.
It's fine. I don't think it changes for too much. It's just additive, right?
Yeah, it's whenever a character's on main, you can always add more and change stuff around. You don't have to get it all done before they're ready for main. Because like what she already has there is great. She's already above 1,700 lines, which is impressive. My question to you would be, how much do you plan to do with Saria after she is on main?
I have left developing my Saria just due to some changes in my real life status. I think I'll probably keep on with Saria for quite a bit longer. I don't think I'm the type of person who really just considers a project to be done. But, you know, obviously nothing is infinite. So I do think I'll be updating her quite some time, just to keep her, relevant. I want her to be an enjoyable character, and that takes time.
Yeah. And it's fine to take a break from a character and come back to them with, like a fresher inspiration for them.
Oh, certainly. I think I'm a little bit exhausted of it, so it will be small for it, at least.
Don't get exhausted until I'm done writing targets to her.
Better hurry up.
Well, on the subject of writing, I think she feels sufficiently divorced from Ocarina of Time. But at the moment, she kind of feels like the vibe is sort of like a more general Zelda setting that maybe you'd see in like porn and just like fan works in general, if they're not based on any specific Zelda game. So I think she could do with a little more exposition on Hyrule Conquest and kind of what's the status quo of that setting. Because if that's not there, then people will kind of fill in the blanks with their residual knowledge of Ocarina of Time. I know I've done that. I'm guilty of that. We've gone over that in messages. Like she's lore heavy in a general sense, the general setting, but I was sometimes wondering like what exactly is the situation in Hyrule Conquest at the moment. Maybe you just want to do that in targets, but like maybe just like some self-introduction.
Right, I can like commit a little bit more to that. I will say though that unfortunately Hyrule Conquest essentially is everything is happening at the same time. So, you know, if you believe in the Ocarina of Time canon, you're correct. If you believe in the Wind Waker canon, well, it's not long after that, and, you know, so on and so forth.
But she generally knows what hallmarks and touchstones to hit. She felt pretty consistent in that regard, not overly forced in anything she says. And even when she does make kind of oddball comments like Nord does, it's almost, I think, like that's kind of what you're going for, right? She's kind of
Like
coy.
Nord the person.
Yeah, she's off. She's she's of the Fey folk. You know, she's supposed to be a little weird and inhuman at times. And I even suggested up the creepiness, make her stare more, a very knowing stare. I know what you are. In that sense, I am wise beyond my years. I have lived 10 of your lives.
Is this all stuff that is applying to me as well?
Nord,
Sure.
you can let it go. It's okay. It wasn't your fault, Nord.
I'm missing something in this conversation here. So
I know I'm Irish, but to call me the Fey folk?
So yeah, I mean, in some regards, there's not a ton to work with, but the puns that she has are a lot of fun. The lore that she has is a lot of fun, and she's not afraid to flirt. Which, I mean, good, right? If people are worried about her being too childlike, then make her very adult. Don't hold back. Have her explore her sexuality, and have the theme of very much moving beyond your sheltered environment. I see a trend. I see a trend with Saria and Lysithea. I don't know if this has a personal appeal for you, but these petite girls asserting their womanhood and their zest for life.
Next one will not be petite, I promise. But no, it's, you pick the characters that sound like they make the most sense. Well, I guess like Lysithea is a meditation on spending the time you have left. And if you actually play Lysithea, together they do explore, like, what does it mean to have had more time than you needed, and what does it mean to have not enough time or you goals? Right. So it is more an exploration on time and effort, because when you throw away 6 years of your life on a very fancy document that says that yes, putting resources on things makes those things do better, it's an interesting question. When you answer the obvious, does it matter that much? Regardless.
I put 7 years of my life on this game. She plays a lot of songs on her ocarina, by the way. That was kind of my idea as well. Not totally, but I said you should have collectibles regarding the song. That's fine, but I haven't played Ocarina of Time enough to know them just by the notes, at least not most of them. So maybe have a bit of an explanation for what song she was playing.
I actually started as filler because I didn't want to write more minor whole lines. And it got kind of out of hand.
Last off, I'll just leave some notes on the art. She's with her fairy, Seeb, I think it's pronounced.
CB.
He's not super active. He just kind of, he doesn't have a voice. He just talks to Saria, and you can't really hear what he's saying. She doesn't have a pose that's quite facing Seeb. She kind of does, but it's not like there's no animation of him entering or anything. She's like kind of looking at him, but not really. I think that could be conveyed a little better visually, that she's talking to him, especially because he doesn't have any dialogue himself. Nothing objectionable on the age side. Again, I think she looked perfectly good. She's not even the most petite character in the game. Far from it.
She's not supposed
to be. Up the
be.
creepiness angle a little bit. Yeah. And again, I have to agree with Nord. I really like how the angle of her ears kind of lets you know how she's thinking, the mood she's in. I've heard that dubbed the ear barometer. And unlike dogs, when their ears stick up, I like the breeds with their ears cropped. She has a lot of cute, flirty, very coy looks, like this naked pose that I posted. Very nice. Again, good to show some sexuality. And when she shakes her ears, there should be try using an after image or motion blur instead of the little lines. I think that would look better. On the whole, though, very little to criticize, just things to add. I think you did a really nice job with her, especially considering, let's say, the challenging concept and response.
Is by
I think
nature.
she's about as good as you could pull off.
Thank you very much. I look forward to improving her further.
Yeah, well on her way to the main roster, and very nice effort. I didn't see a ton of people complaining in the feedback poll or anything. So again, I think that's just a vocal minority. It's backing the facts.
I think the facts went out at the end, and if people are upset, make sure they're upset about things that are the things they're actually upset about. Let's make it help with that. But
So
anyway.
Yeah, that was a mouthful. That was a lot to get through, but I think it was a very interesting discussion. These two characters and the academic work associated with them.
Yes, and if anyone wants to critique that work, it's definitely not my greatest. But I also think that I cranked it out in the course of like 3 weeks. But yeah, I suppose what goes in America, I'm sorry, specifically is she's supposed to be very much an exploration of leaving one part of her life behind and going on to other things and sort of the fear and the opportunity that goes with that. So she's playful, she's a bit dry, she's a bit weird, but she's supposed to have this tenderness and excitement about her that is often what's missing in our lives. We don't turn to games like this because we're trying to tell a complex story, or, but you want to have, if you're going to be gooning to something, you want to be gooning to art. And I think adding a little bit of metaphor on top of that as an artist is fun to explore.
I think you did a good job. I think that's
Thank you.
we can all relate to that concept. Being naked is also something we can all relate to.
Yes, of course. But basically, Saria is supposed to be an exploration on the differences between how one is seen and how one acts. And she's not supposed to be a child. She's not supposed to be bathed for people that want that. And she never is. And if they're feeling that's more true than it isn't, I would ask you to reassess your biases. Or, seems like a you problem.
Well, on that
Thank you very much
bombshell,
for having me on that spicy note to end it.
on that bombshell, do either of you have any final comment? Well, it sure seemed like you did on Vinyl or Saria, or the paper associated with Saria.
I think you did a good job. I'm excited I hope you stick around for a while yet to come, because I'm excited to see what else you can cook up in future. And now that the Masp is free from posing Saria, I am stealing him for a while to get another Zelda character done.
Well, yeah, lock him in the basement.
Grape Ghost, you are also working on some Zelda characters.
I'm also working on some other things, yes. I will ignore the vast French fiction now, but I'm working on Linkle next. I'm waiting on Nomlet to get to her art. He's a master worker. It takes him a while to get there. Maybe I'll work on something else. In the meantime, maybe a male character. Maybe I'll upgrade Sayori. Let's see.
You're going to upgrade Sayori into a male character?
Yes. We need more Futanari alts.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for coming on. You've been a very eloquent host, very organized. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Or not host, guest. Excuse me. You're the new host.
Oh no. Not like this.
Nord, thank you for being my co-host.
I enjoyed being your guest this episode.
Thank you for engaging in this academic discourse. And thanks everybody for listening and for hearing us out. For not just clicking off the video when you saw Saria on the thumbnail or in the description.
Oh my God.
Remember to leave your hate comments below, because even hate comments are engagement.
Your tears fuel me. Yeah, not really. Please don't be mean to me. I'm trying my best.
I also want everyone to like me. Anyway, I'm Spinanon. I like ass. And he's Nord. He likes tits. Especially when you can squeeze them like grapes. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Have a great evening.